Now this is actually it for the query selectors and operators. Let's now briefly come back to that cursor thing, which I already touched on earlier in this course. The find method, unlike the find one method, yields us a cursor, if you remember. Now, why is that important and why does it do that? Well, if we have our client communicate with the MongoDB server, we potentially get back thousands or even millions of documents with find, especially if we have no condition in there. But even with a condition, you easily have a condition that still meets like 1,000 documents or more, depending on the scale of your app. So you get back all these results. And that is very inefficient because all these results have to be fetched from the database, they have to be sent over the wire, and then they have to be loaded into memory in your client application. So these are three things that are not optimal because chances are you will not need all 1,000 documents at the same time. And therefore, find gives you a cursor. A cursor is basically a pointer which has the query you wrote stored and which can therefore quickly go to the database and say, hey, give me the next batch, give me the next batch. And indeed, you work with batches of data then. You fetch the data one by one, so one document by a time. And it really is only transferred over the wire when you request the next one. Now in the shell, we get 20 by default because the shell automatically basically takes the cursor and gets us the first 20 documents before we can get more. If you write an application with a MongoDB driver, and we'll see that in the from driver to shell module at the end of the course, then you have to control that cursor manually and make sure you get back your results. And that cursor approach is great because it saves resources. If you have a query that meets 1,000 documents, but let's say you have a website where you only display 10 items, let's say 10 products you fetched at a time anyways, then there is no need to load all 1,000 results that matched your query right at the start. Instead, you would only fetch the first 10, display them on the screen, and then go ahead and fetch the next 10 when the user navigated to the next page or anything like that. This is the idea behind a cursor. Now, we'll find out how to work with a cursor later, as I mentioned, when I talk about how you use the MongoDB driver in a real application, but I can already show you some things in this module. So in the next lectures, we'll play around with the cursor a bit.